Good morning and welcome to the Talk of the Town. I'm Sonali Vanik-Baduge. I'm joined by CEO of the Advocata Institute, Dhananath Fernando. Good morning and welcome, Dhananath.
Good morning, Sonali.
Dhananath, recently cabinet approval was granted to increase VAT from 15% to 18%. And when taxes become oppressive, recently, cabinet approval was granted to increase VAT from 15% to 18%. And since VAT is an indirect tax, this affects the most vulnerable in the most disproportionate manner. So effectively, a billionaire will pay 18% for a kilogram of dal. The sex worker earning 3,000 rupees through her unregulated work will also have to pay 18% on a kilo of dal. How does this make sense? Speak to us about what happens when taxes become oppressive.
Indirect taxes have always been a concern because everybody has to pay that rate, and especially most of these indirect taxes affects the food prices, and also it has becoming a challenge for poor people, poor section of the society to pay it. I think the reasoning is mainly because, of course, there's a discussion about increasing the government salaries on one side, and also from the IMF front, they have indicated that we are behind about 15% from the tax revenue that we promised in the IMF agreement. So that probably the reason that what caused the tax increase for VAT. But again, this is definitely going to increase the prices of goods and services, and it will basically affect the poorest of the poor the most. And the other side, there may be, again, since the budget is coming, they may be also considering, we do not know, considering some tax revisions on the pay front because the professionals are adding pressure on bringing down the taxes. So ultimately, this is a case that the burden has been passed to the poor people, but what we have been recommending is to minimize the expenditure from the government side, because otherwise we are just trying to collect revenue for a bottomless pot, and that cannot be bridged. So basically, this will be a burden on the people, but again, the government expenditure has to be curtailed, otherwise we will not be able to bridge this gap.
We are having this conversation in the backdrop of being in an IMF program. We're looking at debt restructuring and macroeconomic stability. And we're also looking at an upcoming budget. What kind of reforms must be done in the next 12 months, Dhananath, to ensure that people don't suffer as much as they have?
I would still focus on the state-owned enterprises reforms because, as I said, most of the state-owned enterprises are colossally loss-making. That has to happen. The trade reforms has to happen because we are basically producing things and selling to the world if we really want to grow the economy. So trade reforms is key, and also in terms of attracting investors and boosting exports, we really do not have any industrial lands anymore because BOI hasn't done any projects for the last 15 years, and 95% of the industrial lands in the western province are already occupied. So I will focus on those three and setting the fundamentals right and making sure the governance reforms are done, because otherwise, without fixing those fundamentals, we really do not take the economy to the next stage, because we will again fall back to square one.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. Dhananath Fernando, CEO, Advocata Institute. It's back to the studio.